Today on StampTV, I'm going to show you another fun project featuring the Simple Things StampTV kit. Let me show you the tools and products you're going to need to make this project. First, you're going to need some stamps, and of course I'm using stamps from the Simple Things StampTV kit. I'm using this large oval frame. I'm also using everyone's favorite, this cute little fox, and I'm using the greeting that says many thanks. Then for cardstock, I'm using some of the Gina Designs Fresh Asparagus, some of our heavy base weight ivory, and our dark chocolate cardstock. For pattern paper, I'm using one of the pieces from the Simple Things pattern paper pack, and this comes in the kit as well. Then I have a couple other embellishment kinds of things here that I'm going to be using today. And these also, you get 3 of these in the StampTV kit. These are our pointed ovals, vintage cuts, and I'm going to be using one of those. I'm also going to be using the little fox from the Bounty of Blessings vintage cuts. And then I'm going to be using one of the leaves from our Wood Embellishments, the Autumn Leaves collection. And you also get some autumn leaves in the kit. Along with that, I'm going to be using some of our twisted twine, and this is the Kraft color, very similar to the color that's in the StampTV kit. Now, if you've already used that twine that's in the kit, you can also use some of the gold cording that you got free with the purchase of this kit, or you can use any twine or cording that you have at home. I'm also going to use some of this dark chocolate organdy ribbon. For ink pads, I'm using the Gina Designs Dark Chocolate ink, and I'm going to be using the Memento Tuxedo Black ink because I'm going to be coloring with some of the alcohol markers. For alcohol markers, I'm using the Spectrum Noir markers, I'm using the colorless blender pen, and I'm using the TN4. I'll also be using some tape and scissors and also my Kraft pick so you can watch me struggle getting the twisted twine inside that little leaf. And I'm using some 1/4-inch pop dots. I'm also going to be adding an embellishment with this die, and this is the mini Fanciful Flourish die that we have available in our store at GinaKdesigns.com. If you don't have this die and you want to use something that you already have, you may have a Flourish punch or a different die, or even maybe you have an electronic cutter like the Cricut or the Silhouette and you want to cut out a Flourish. So that's an alternative to actually getting this die. But when you see this die, I think you're going to like it. Okay, so to begin, I'm going to start with one of these pointed ovals. And like I said, these come in a 6-pack. You can buy these in ivory or in white, but you also get a few of them when you get the Simple Things StampTV kit. Now I'm going to use some of the dark chocolate ink along with this large oval stamp. And I'm going to ink this stamp up while it's on its back. It's a little bit easier for me to ink stamps up when they're upside down, when they're really big. And I just want to make sure I get the whole thing covered. And that looks pretty good. Okay. So now I'm going to stamp that, and excuse my head if it gets in the way. I'm going to stamp that onto this oval, vintage cut. It does take me a little bit to get it lined up. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on it, make sure that it's getting inked up on all the sides, especially when they're bigger stamps like this. You can see my stamp is a little bit stained from some other cards that I've been making, but that's okay. That won't, as long as it's clean, the stains won't transfer from project to project. I like to turn it upside down and just rub along the whole perimeter. Okay, so there is my beautiful frame. I really like this frame for so many things, not just for autumn cards, but I've been using it for all kinds of cards and mixing it and matching it with other stamps in my collection. Okay, so I'm going to put this aside for just a minute, and I'm going to grab the vintage cuts, the Bounty of Blessings vintage cuts, and take out one of these little fox vintage cuts. These are so fun to use. And here's the stamp, and I'm going to ink that up with some of the Memento Tuxedo Black. And I'll stamp that right on this little guy. It's a little easier for me to see because it's small. Okay, so he is ready to be colored. Now also, while I have the Tuxedo Black out, I'll just grab this Many Thanks Greeting. And I'm going to stamp this down here at the bottom. And make sure that's straight. There we go. So that's at the bottom of the oval. All right. Now my next step is going to be to color in the little fox, and I'm going to do that using the TN4. And you can use any tan alcohol marker, and even if you have the Bic markers, there's a really nice tan marker in there. It may not be the exact same color, but that's okay. As long as it's a tan and it coordinates with the pattern paper, you're fine. Or you may prefer to make your fox red or bright orange, or there's no rules that say they have to be a natural color either. I've been known to color these little animals in turquoise and all kinds of fun colors. So color however it makes you happy. And you can see the little pointed tip on this Spectrum Noir marker is very, very convenient for getting into these tight areas. Let me just finish the top of him here. Okay. And now I'm going to color his body. First I'm going to go around the little spots. Just makes it easier for me to get those out of the way. I'm going to leave those in the ivory color of the cardstock. This is kind of an easy way to color. When you have the right color coming through in the back, you don't have to color anything more than his fur down here. We'll give him little white feet at the bottom, or ivory feet. And you can see I'm not doing any particular shading, I'm just laying down a bunch of color here because I'm going to texturize him, make him look a little more whimsical. Let's get his tail done. This is a fun image to color and just a fun image to make cards with. The fox is a very popular trend right now, and it can be used for all kinds of cards. You don't have to only use this in the fall. The fox is very popular in the winter too. Okay. So now I've colored him in. Let me just smooth him out just a little bit. Lay down a little bit more color here. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to add a little bit of texture in there. And I'm going to do that by using the Spectrum Noir blender pen. And I'm going to start with his head, and I'm just going to dot. I'm just going to go straight down and hold it there for a second and add a little dot, just like this. You can see these little dots coming through. And this is a really fun alternative to shading, just to add texture, some cute little pattern, like that. Then I'm going to do the same thing with his body. I'm just going to space them out. And get in and around these little white spots. And they don't have to be in any particular pattern. You can just put them wherever you feel like. You can see all those little dots coming up. This is so much fun. This is fun to do on all kinds of different images like balloons and things like that too. So there, now I have my spotted fox. Alright, my next step is going to be to adhere these two pieces of paper together, the pattern paper and this dark chocolate cardstock. So I'm going to do that using some of the mono adhesive. And get that lined up correctly. Then I'm going to add a little bit of this dark chocolate ribbon down here near the bottom. So I'm going to cut that off. And I'm going to just tack it down on the back. I am going to pull it up one time and reposition it once I add my embellishment to this, but for now I'm just going to tack it down so that I know where about I want it to be in relation to my focal image. Okay, so I have that done. Now I'm going to cut out, let me move this out of the way, I'm going to cut out the Flourish using my Cuttlebug and an A and a B plate. And then I'm going to use some of this fresh asparagus cardstock along with that mini Fanciful Flourish die. Now I'm going to put my C plate on top, and then just to give it a little bit of extra kind of pressure, I'm going to use one piece of cardstock. Now I wouldn't recommend trying that right off the bat. I would try your Cuttlebug or your Big Shot or whatever tool you're using, and if it doesn't cut all the way through, then add a piece of cardstock and see if that makes a difference for you, because it does tighten things up quite a bit. Okay, take a look at that. There we go, and you can see there's that Flourish. Now this is a very delicate little image, so you do kind of have to be careful pulling it out. And you may want to use something like a Kraft pick for the smaller areas if you find that they're not just coming out easily like mine is, but this is coming out nicely. So we'll just get the rest of this out. And because it has all these swirls and stuff, it kind of gets caught on itself coming out too. So just take your time and just get it out gently. I just love this design. This is so intricate and elegant. And it's nice and small. It's a good size for card makers. A lot of flourishes are really pretty, but they're really big and would make great flourishes for scrapbook pages and home decor, but they're a little bit big for card making, and this is a really nice size for card making. So there we go. There is that Flourish. Okay, and I'm going to just put that aside. One good thing to do, I just want to snip this off there. One good thing to do too is if you ever have one of those days where you really feel like crafting but you just can't think of what to make, just spend an hour cutting out a whole bunch of flourishes in different colors and put them in a little envelope, and then you have them ready to go for when you want to make cards in the future. Okay, now this flourish is going to go onto the oval, and I'm going to adhere that using a little bit of mono adhesive. And I'm just going to put that right about there, like that. The best way to attach this is to take the mono adhesive and just put it on the leaves, because they're a little bit bigger and easier to put adhesive on. And as long as it's on the leaves, it'll hold down really well. I also put a little bit right in this area here because I can hold everything down at the same time. So that's another place that you can add some adhesive. Okay, so now this is going to go right about here. And then I'm going to press it down. Actually, let me move it over just a little. Well, I better not. There we go. Okay. So now that's attached to that oval. Isn't that pretty? It's so elegant. Just looks like vines growing over the top of that. Alright, and this whole panel is going to go on top of this particular bit of ribbon here. And I'm just going to move it down a little bit like that. And I'm going to do that directly onto the paper. I'm not going to use any pop dots or anything. Alright. before I stick that on, why don't we add the embellishment? Because I am going to have to move this ribbon around. So we're going to add the embellishment first. Now, these are the wood embellishments, the Autumn Leaves Vintage. This is part of our vintage cut line, but it's our wood embellishments line. And I'm going to be using this particular leaf. And I'm going to grab a little bit of twine. And I always like to cut enough to work with, even though I probably don't need that much. It's not too bad to have that little bit of extra. Okay, so I'm going to feed this through the back here. And this is where my Kraft pick comes in. It's going to try to help me get this through easily. I'm just going to kind of push it through. Actually, I'm holding it down too much, so there we go. See on the other end, it's starting to come through. You could use something even a little bit thicker, like the tip of a pencil, and that'll push more of it through easier. All right, a little bit more. There we go. Now I can grab it. Okay, so now I have that through. It's folded in half and I have it through, and then I'm going to just take the two free edges and put them inside the loop and then pull. And that makes it hang straight as opposed to on its side when you just kind of thread it through one side. And now I'm going to take one side of this and feed it underneath this ribbon. And then I'm going to tie it into a little bow. Let's get this nice and tight. So we want it to scrunch the ribbon up like that. And this is where I said I have to reposition the ribbon. Let's make the bow first and just get it all in place. Okay. Now I'm going to lift that up on the back and then just kind of relax the ribbon a little bit. And then stick it back down on the other side. All right. Now I'm going to cut away the free edges here. And then I want this leaf to lay down. I don't want it sticking up like that. That wouldn't be so pretty. So what I'm going to do is grab one of these 1/4-inch pop dots, and I'm going to apply that to the back bottom part of that leaf, and then I'm going to position that where I want it. Let's move that down just a bit. There we go. Like that. And that will keep it down, get it out of the way. Okay, so now back to this. Let's find a good position for this. It can either go on top or underneath the ribbon, whichever you prefer. It doesn't really even need to now that that ribbon's there. All right. So we'll put that there like that. And now I'm going to take this whole panel and I'm going to add it onto my Ivory Card Base. And you know I like to add a little bit of extra tape over the ribbon to make sure it doesn't come up, sneak out from underneath. All right. And then my final step is going to be to add this little fox. And I'm going to add him just off to the side, but I'm going to pop him up with some pop dots so he's sticking out just a bit. And that'll kind of bring him to the front of the image, front of that whole focal image with the oval and the flourish and the greeting. He'll kind of stick out first. He'll be the first thing you see. Okay, and I'm going to just hold this up so I position him correctly. I don't want to go over the words. There we go. We'll add him right there. And you can see that really, the little shadow from behind, it really does draw your eye right to that image. So there is my finished card project. I hope you've enjoyed today's video project. Stay tuned for more card projects featuring the Simple Things StampTV kit here at StampTV.com.